How do you make a pie when you don't have everything to make a pie? What do you do when you're in the middle of God's country and can't leave to save your life? My friends, I tell you truly, nothing sparks creativity like the unique desperation found in quarantine, born from boredom and a serious family sweet tooth. Today, we venture beyond the confines of the cookbook and learn how to bake an apple crumble pie with nothing but our wits, a splash of substitution, and not quite the right stuff. Today, we will be substituting a frying pan in place of a pie pan, sugar and molasses in place of brown sugar, shortening in place of butter, a wooden dowel in place of a rolling pin, and pink lady apples in place of Granny Smith apples. You want to begin by oiling your pie pan, or in our case frying pan, to prevent the crust from sticking. This can be done with any oil and a soft spatula or a paper towel. You may want to avoid strongly flavored oils such as olive oil because these can leave a strong flavor on your crust. Also, you want to make sure that the oil layer on the pie pan is not too thick because this can leave an unpleasant texture in your crust. Alternately, you don't want to make it so that there isn't enough oil because, again, with the sticking problem. Now that that's done, we're going to have to get this pie crust into this pie pan. You will begin by rolling the pie crust over the wooden dowel. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can use any long, round object you have. I use the wooden dowel because it's the most rolling pin object I could find. As you roll the crust over your rolling pin, you want to pull the edges up with the pin to prevent it from tearing. Some crusts may be more delicate and tear anyway, and that is okay. You can repair them after you get most of it into the pie pan. But getting the bulk of the pie crust is probably the most daunting thing you will face here. As you place it into the bottom of the pie pan, you want to make sure that you get an even amount of crust on all edges. As you can see, we have not achieved that here. But it's okay. You can pick it up and move it. It just makes it a little more difficult. Now you want to press on the edges and smooth any bumps over. You may also have some extra on the top, and that's okay. You simply take a knife and cut those off. As you cut them off, you want to make sure that you're not pressing into the pie pan as you're doing that, because it's better to have a little bit too much crust than not enough crust. Now that this is done, you want to clean up your workstation. We'll set that aside while we do that. This could be done with any basic washcloth or paper towel. And simply just wipe it off. Baking is a little bit of a messy process, but I think it's worth the final product. Now we will begin on our crumble. For the crumble, we will be using 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1/3 cup of white sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of roasted almonds, and 1/2 cup to a 3/4 cup of shortening, depending on how crispy you want your crumble to be. It's really easy. You just dump it all into the bowl, like so. Next, you take a fork and you whisk it all together. You really want to make sure that the shortening gets evenly distributed throughout the entire crumble because it is the only liquid here and acts as a binding agent between the rest of the ingredients. If you were to have too much shortening in some places and not enough shortening in other places, you would have some parts of your crumble being crispy and hard, while other parts of it being drier and fluffier, all on the same pie. Because shortening might be a little bit more dry than butter, you may want to melt 1/2 of it to a 1/4 of it to get more of that moisture in there. But it's okay if you don't. You just have to whisk a little bit more vigorously. While you're whisking, you want to press down on it as well to mash up those lumps that occur while you're whisking, as you can see here. Even as you're whisking, you can see that it's not going to turn out looking like any kind of batter. And that's okay, because this is called a crumble for a reason. There's just enough moisture in here to make a yummy pie topping. The original recipe did not have any almonds in it, but I personally think that adding the almonds adds the perfect amount of flavor and crunch, especially after they're roasted, and they add that extra nutty flavor. Now that that's done, you can set that aside, and it's time to work on the pie filling. To begin the pie filling, you have to start with apples. First, you want to make sure you have a firm grip on your apple. Next, you want to take your peeler, or in our case, a knife, and angle it so it catches on the skin of the apple. Then you want to peel downward lightly. You really don't want to peel with too much pressure, because then you can take off the flesh of the apple, which tends to be crucial to making a pie. After your apple is peeled, like so, you take it and you can cut it into quarters. In order to core it, you want to cut along the inner core of the apple, as you can see right here. You may have to core it in both directions, and you may want to wedge it in the middle and pop it out, because it can get stuck. Now that the apple is peeled and cored, you want to take your apple and slide it down the slicing side of a cheese grater. This allows for thinner slices of apples that make for a softer, smoother pie filling. The thinner slices also allow you to fit more apple into the pie. As you see, you want to keep your fingers away from the blade, because finger does not taste good in apple pie. And make sure you don't cut on an edge, because then you'll end up with uneven apple slices, which probably isn't the end of your pie world, but it's better to have the full chunk. Now that you've learned how to core and peel and slice the apple, it's time to make the pie filling. For the pie filling, you use half a teaspoon of zest, half a tablespoon of lemon juice, and 3 tablespoons of flour combined with a teaspoon of cinnamon and 1/3 cup sugar. You want to take all of these and combine them with your apples. Next, lightly toss them until well combined. While tossing the apples, you want to turn your 2 spoons in opposite directions to make so that there is optimal mixing. Now that is completed, we want to take our crust and fill it with the pie. While doing this, you want to make sure that all the pie gets evenly distributed throughout the shell. You may have to spread it around inside the pie crust, like so, to get rid of any air pockets that can occur. While doing this, you want to be careful how you handle your bowl, because it can end up tipping really easily with the weight of the apples and making for a big pie mess. Kind of like that, but bigger. Now, because there's so many apples in this pie, you really have to spread it around and try to fit as many in there, because it will be a very full pie, which is really good for an end product, but kind of more complicated while you're making it.